What if one farmer, holding one letter, exposed the political failure of an entire trade strategy? Not with a protest, not with a speech, not with shouting, but with 4 sentences printed on company letterhead. Inside a packed gymnasium in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin, 412 people had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine town hall meeting. The room was already beyond capacity. People stood along the back wall. Others listened from the corridor through a speaker installed just before the event began. At the front stood a Republican senator, used to explaining difficult policies to rural voters, farmers, workers, and business owners. But this night was different. A 63-year-old dairy farmer stood up without waiting to be called on. In his hand was not a sign, not a political slogan, not a campaign prop. It was a letter. A business letter from a Canadian dairy distributor. The message was short and devastating. Because of the trade environment and new Canadian procurement decisions, the company would not renew his annual supply contract. 11 years of business ended in 4 sentences. The farmer looked at the senator and said, "You told me this would work." Then he raised the letter and added, "This is what came instead." For 6 seconds, the room went completely silent. Not ordinary silence, the kind of silence that happens when everyone understands that a political talking point has just collided with real life. This moment matters because the trade strategy had been sold with 4 clear promises. A $180 billion reduction in the trade deficit, 240,000 new manufacturing jobs, Canada back at the negotiating table within 90 days, and proof that American economic pressure could force results. But according to the latest political accounting, the numbers moved in the opposite direction. The trade deficit widened by $47 billion. Manufacturing jobs fell by 47,000 in the most exposed states. Canada did not return quietly to the table. Instead, it moved closer to Europe, adjusted trade relationships, and reduced dependence on American pressure. For Republican senators who supported the strategy, the problem is no longer theoretical. It is arriving in cancellation letters. It is showing up in factory schedules. It is appearing in polling data. In Wisconsin, rural Republican approval has reportedly dropped sharply. In Ohio, a primary challenger is closing the gap. In Michigan, support among key working-class Republican voters has weakened. And in Iowa, internal polling reportedly shows that 61% of Republican voters are less likely to support an incumbent who backed the trade authority legislation. That is not just policy failure. That is political damage inside the party's own base. Subscribe for daily political updates and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next report.